Are you a radio enthusiast?
A research student?
Or a curious thinker looking for an adventure?
If this sounds like you, welcome to
The Summer I Found My Spark.
My name is Errah.
And I'm Maci. We are thrilled to be back for another exciting semester of interviewing Adelphi's brightest minds. In this podcast, we ask current research students about their journey of discovering their research topics, the gruesome process of reaching out to mentors, their successes and setbacks, and their goals ahead. We hope this podcast can guide our listeners in their own path of research and self-discovery.
This episode is brought to you in collaboration with the Sparks Research Center, where curiosity meets innovation. Each summer, the Sparks Center funds students to take on independent research projects across various disciplines. Whether you're interested in computer sciences, dance, literature, or public health, there's something for every listener with a curious take on life. So keep your ears sharp, for this podcast might just leave you inspired or searching for your own spark. To find out more, please visit the Sparks Instagram page and website linked in our description.
Today, we are joined by the wonderful Joanna Karpiel, a senior art history major who's minoring in French, and she's also part of the Museum Studies program, Precuratorial, right?
Yes.
And in the Honors College. So this year, under the mentorship of Dr. Eva Zach, an assistant professor of Adelphi's Art and Art History Department, Joanna researched the contemporary relevance and ideological preservation of the young Poland artists, a modern Polish art movement in the turn of the 19th century. Let's hear more from Joanna about her research journey, her inspiration and setbacks. And thank you so much for joining us in the studio today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
We're really excited to have you here as well. Now, Joanna, before we dive any deeper, let's just set the stage for our listeners so they can follow along. Could you give us a quick art history refresher on two major movements, on the Art Nouveau and the Art and Crafts movement? And how do you think that ties back to the Young Poland movement?
Of course. So I really enjoy arts and crafts movement and Art Nouveau just like stylistically and visually. I think that they're very popular like for those reasons. So the arts and craft movement I think is a little bit less known than the Art Nouveau, but it kind of stemmed from this like need for a return to pre-Renaissance ideals and like moving away from industrialization. There was a lot of like focus on like people deserve to have these like beautiful objects surrounding them. So it's like a style that kind of encompassed so many different aspects of art. So there's the traditional fine arts of like painting and sculpture, as well as wallpaper designs and like furniture and interior design. So there's a lot of design and like art kind of meshing together here. And then Art Nouveau, people like see it. It's like very like floral. It's like focus on like the female figure. It's kind of like it's very like French. Like if you go to Paris, you'll see it in like the souvenir shops
In
along
the subway stations.
exactly everywhere. Yeah, like the metro in Paris. So it's related to Art Nouveau visually because not Art Nouveau, the Young Poland movement visually, because it has these kind of like floral motifs and like this return to something that's not touched by industrialization, but it's for different reasons than like the Art Nouveau and arts and crafts artists were doing.
It's amazing how circular history can be, especially when it comes to art.
Exactly.
As a viewer, I think we often forget the level of thought and doubt that lingers behind every brushstroke, every decision that you make in an art piece. And I'm curious to learn more about the young Poland artists themselves. So, Joanna, you are someone with Polish heritage. What inspired you to take on this thesis topic? Was there a particular artist or painting that moved you? Did it come from somewhere else?
Yes. So in the summer of 2023 or 2024, I can't really remember, but I went to the National Museum in Kraków, Poland, which is where my mom's from, and we go like pretty frequently, go every summer. And there was an exhibition. It's a permanent. They have a very large permanent collection of young Poland and like modern artists from Poland. And I saw one painting by Kazimierz Cichulski. He was a young Poland artist. He focused a lot on the Hucel region in Poland, which is like a mountainous region, a little bit different from like where the other young Polish artists were. But he painted a traditional like folk wedding. And it was like it's such a beautiful painting. And it was like my first time kind of seeing like my culture represented in like a museum. And it was like seeing like these beautiful colors, and it was like painted like kind of in the style of like Impressionism or like this kind of like modern art movement. So I'm used to like seeing like some Polish art like in my house of like people in like a parliament room and like wearing like wigs. But this was like an everyday kind of scene, and it was like just really moving for me to see. So I wanted to learn even more about it.
That sounds really fascinating. I know that you mentioned that the Young Poland movement started for a different motive than Art Nouveau and the arts and craft movement. And I also did my own little research on Wyspiański's work and his investment in portraying the interclass between the peasants and the gentry. So what can you tell us about peasantmania in the renewal of Polish identity, or maybe even its emphasis in your favorite painting or the drama, The Wedding, that you just talked about?
Yeah, so Young Poland as a movement, it's not the same as like Impressionism or Cubism, that it has one set like style. Artists are kind of working in a lot of different mediums and a lot of different like styles, like aesthetics, and it also like encompasses literature. So Wyspiański, he was one of like the leading figures. I do call him like the Monet of of Young Poland, in that he was kind of like not a forefather exactly, but he was very well known in the movement. So he wrote, and he was an artist, so a lot of his art did focus on like this renewal of Polish identity, because Poland was under its third partition. So Poland was partitioned 3 times, so it was off the map for 123-ish years.
Wow.
So this part of Poland that like really had the Young Poland movement was in the south, so like Kraków, like the mountains. It's called Galicia, like that region, and it was under Austria. So Polish people, like Poles in this area, had some more autonomy than like in the past or other regions of Poland. They had their own parliament. Where am I going with this? Yeah.
But you can expect the parliament is part of the class system, the structure.
Mm-hmm. So because of this like kind of like yearn for like its own Polish state again, people were like, people were looking at like the peasants of kind of like this pure like Polish cultures and tradition, this like return to like rural life and farming and just like folk art. So that's where this kind of peasant mania started, is because they were going to like areas like in the mountains or outside of cities where people were still living the traditional lifestyles, because like things like don't reach rural areas like that, you know, like people are still gonna do what they do. So a lot of artists were like even like just like marrying into peasant families to get closer to people, but also like there were love marriages, but like it was also pretty much to be a peasant per se. And
that's so interesting.
Yeah. So
go for it.
I'm so sorry. I've compared it before. I don't know if this is wrong, don't come at me, but I've compared it before to like how Gauguin sees like people in like Tahiti, except without like the rape. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's kind of just like they're like, these people are like preservers of Polish culture during a time where Poles are being like Russified, or they can't speak their own language, or they can't do this or that.
So they're like binary intentions that are one for preserving the culture, but there's also seem to be this underlying almost peasant fetish.
A little bit.
Involved.
I was gonna say, do you feel like that like goes into like a fetishization of like peasant culture? I mean, like I think when you look at even today, I think that people look at this and they get into a place of uncertainty, whether it's politically or personally. They get into that place of like, oh my gosh, everything's changing. I don't know what to do. And they reach for something that's comfortable, something that feels like safe and removed. Like, I mean, you see people like, there's a huge thing about returning to physical media now, which is similar on a much different scale, obviously, but where people are going back to something that feels more small scale in some ways. It feels like, I don't know, kind of safe, I guess, or less attached to the world around them. And I wonder if that's kind of similar to this like this element of seeking out something that's in your roots.
I feel like it is a little bit, but it's more, in this case, I think it's more of like in like the protest kind of way of like we've been under this foreign rule for so long that we're going to return to something that's like innately Polish, instead of like cities like Kraków still like it used to be the seat of power for Poland, but obviously like cities, people move to cities, people like there's more of like an kind of mix of cultures, so like going back to these roots.
So it's like an act of resistance.
Yeah,
I like that.
I would say.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. In your time at Adelphi, you did a semester abroad in France and conducted archival work with Adelphi. How have your previous international and interdisciplinary experiences defined your identity as an art historian and investigator?
I'm so the girl who studied abroad, in that, and like every like thing I've written recently for like personal statements or something, I'm like, oh yeah, and when I studied abroad, this helped me because. So I think one thing that I really took away from like studying abroad and just from being like a thing, like fortunately a pretty international person because I have the ability to like travel, is that I love, and like, okay, in like art and archaeology, there's like the concept of like in situ, like you find things like where they were left, you know? So I always said like I was able to like experience a lot of art like in situ. Like I would see like these like not even like architectural things, but like I could see like museums and like artwork in the country that it was made in, which was just like an incredible experience of like you're kind of like walking in the context of the artwork and then you get to go see it. So I think this has been like incredible, and you don't really realize how much art you're kind of missing out on until you're in a place. So for example, like I took this class of like contemporary art of the Mediterranean, and I love this class so much. At first I was very critical of it because it was a lot of like theory in the beginning, which has actually helped me for my thesis, so I shouldn't be speaking, but it was just so interesting to see just like how much of this like contemporary and like even like more like modern art that was happening like in the south of France or in Algeria or in Morocco or just like this whole Mediterranean basin that we don't usually talk about contemporarily is going on. And I wouldn't have really known that unless I took this class in this place and was able to go like this, like these museums or these sites that are like have this art, because like we live in New York. I go to the Met all the time, but it's not gonna like have like a film about a nanny from Senegal who is taken to Antibes, you know? So it's just like this exposure that I wouldn't have had here.
Like the depth of history is really prevalent.
Yeah. And then with like archival work and things, I think I'm just like, I'm really interested in like the afterlife kind of objects too, and like where they go after, and like how it's all like into the art, like the story of the object. And I think I recently said that my future house will have nothing in it because I don't want to task future archivists. It is really fun. I love like being able to see like the stories of people that are kept. It's very like emotional sometimes. Yeah.
That's very minimalistic of you.
I'm not a minimalist, but I think I might be. I started my internship today and the archives were just absolutely overwhelming.
I remember you telling me once about how you had been going through, like in your archival work, had been going through this story and following this woman and tracking her down through records. And like, I remember you telling me that it was kind of an emotional experience.
Yes, because the last few files were her like obituary.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just read all of like her personal letters, and then there's her obituary, and she's been dead literally for like 67 years.
It's so beautiful.
Can an obituary be considered like a memento mori of an artwork?
Yes. I mean, this wasn't tied to an artwork, but it could be like a memento mori. I feel like the more you read obituaries, the more like the concept of like remember you're going to die. And I guess that kind of was like all like I could put my possessions into this archive when I die, like this lady, and then someone else will be reading my obituary.
There's a lot of presence in the void that creates when when you're gone and when you leave that absence behind.
Yeah.
But speaking of modern art in New York, you are taking some very enviable classes at the Met this semester. What's it like to learn art history and art inside such a global famous museum surrounded by the works, and how has it changed the way you engage with art up close, theoretically?
I think I've become very spoiled. This is the second class I've taken at the Met. The last one was just me and one other person, so that one I had even more of an ego trip. But it's kind of like I walk into the Met and I'm like, what are all these people doing at my house? And I know my way around and like
into the back rooms.
Sir, that's my closet.
Yeah, you're looking at my like furniture. What the like what? So it's really like such a cool experience. Like I don't know, like I've taken like, okay, I studied abroad was like, I had a field trip to like the Louvre, and like I did a class presentation on like an artwork in the Louvre. So it's kind of like, it's like mind blowing that I'm looking at like this art piece that I've like studied in like slideshows, and suddenly it's in front of my face and I talk about it in a museum. And it's just like we're like walking around the museum and it's like annoying. My feet hurt and like I can't hear the professor, but I'm in the Met and I'm looking at this artwork 2 feet away from me. And maybe if I get too close, the alarm will sound, but that doesn't happen like if I get too close to a projector. So it's so cool. And I think it's really interesting too, because I'm in like in the museum studies that I get to see not only like this artwork in person, but how it behaves in an art museum, how like its room could get closed off, or like the provenance of the object and like how it's been acquired. And like you learn so much. We learn about like the departments of the museum as well. So it's just kind of this like all-encompassing like education happening.
Yeah. You correlated a museum to a house, and so I'm wondering, there's also this debate going on around the colonial aspects of paintings in a museum. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like the idea of decolonizing a museum and making it more interactive?
I just like, I think like repatriation and decolonizing museums is such a huge thing that a lot of museums are like being better on. But of course there's like the famous like the Caryatid in the British Museum that has a home in Greece and won't be returned. And it's just so like, it's emotional. It's a lot better than it used to be, but it's still not great. Like I like to tell people that like the Natural History Museum or one of the Smithsonian's used to literally exhibit real live people.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh my
So
gosh.
that's what I'm saying. But there's just still like a lot of objects that have been like taken, like in the Rockefeller wing, the Arts of Oceania and the Americas. In Oceania and Americas, there's one more in African art.
Okay.
In the Met, it was just got all redone. But there's a lot of like objects there that even like the people of like the peoples that it belonged to weren't able to see because they were like ceremonial or things. So it's just this kind of, it's like a lot of ethics of like what can be displayed, what should be displayed.
Completely.
That's really interesting and like its own like rabbit hole to dive down.
Yeah.
That's just so frustrating.
Censorship of art.
Yeah.
I love the way that you're talking about these art pieces as if they're alive. I
They
think
are
that, like,
alive.
No, I know. Like that's, and especially when we're discussing repatriation and the way that, you know, museums conduct themselves in that way, that's obviously a big discussion because those art pieces are representative of the people who made them. But I like, even before you were speaking about like how a painting behaves in a museum, I think that's such an interesting concept to think about, how like this could be something that's living and breathing and that you're interacting with. And I think it brings a lot of like life to the study itself and to the work that you're dedicating your time and your life to. I think it's really beautiful.
I actually read a book about the Met wherein the objects were alive.
Ooh.
And only the museum only the museum employees knew. And it's just like, I don't know, I kind of see them differently now. Like they do have lives. Like I've always like thought about like the afterlives of them, but now I'm like, they're alive and they're watching me.
And they're watching me.
And
They're
they're
judging my
watching
work. No, I love that. Okay, so switching gears again. Here at PAWS Radio, we have something we like to call Oh No moments. This is when the project idea you've spent weeks refining gets shot down, or the results you were hoping to get backfires. But as researchers know, failure is fundamental to research success. Have you had any oh no projects or moments during your honors thesis? And if so, how do you deal with those rejections and setbacks?
I'm lucky enough that my thesis doesn't have to like be approved by a board, or I don't need like some kind of survey or something. So not in like the bureaucratic sense, but in like my early stages, I like formed a question. And then I like immediately started researching. I'm like, oh, my question kind of just answered itself. Like my question was common sense. So then I had to like, it was like basic knowledge of the subject. But because like I have never been like taught about young Poland like in classes before, I didn't have this kind of like foundational knowledge that one would need to kind of dive into a research project like this. So I had to kind of like think more and like apply different things. Like I like went into like reached into like the theory that I learned in that class that I ended up liking, or like other like modern movements and like the cross kind of like international things. So I think just like realizing that like I don't know as much as I do, and now I have to like learn more. So I think one thing that I really struggled with is that I'm doing historical research, but I don't have really great like access to like primary sources, and I'm not like a biology major where I can like run an experiment.
Yeah.
So I'm like, how do I make this like different and new? from like what someone in like Poland's saying. So I think that was a lot of like my oh no moments. Like I thought this was a question that I could answer, but it's already like in the textbooks. So how do I make it a little bit different?
I mean, that's another opportunity in the future to dive into it deeper. How has your relationship with your mentor helped you through this process?
Shout out to Professor Eva Zach. I love Professor Zach. She is my advisor, so I've already had like a relationship with her for the past 2 years. I've had so many classes with her. I really look up to her a lot. She's so cool. I told her that she's literally the best. She's so cool. She's so insanely cool. So I think just like having this like awe that like everything she says to me, I'm like, this is God. Like this is the truth. She like, I don't know. She told me once, I don't know if she would like remember saying this, but she told me like arbitrary choices are still choices. And that really helped me so much because I'm like, I can make a choice just because like I need to make a choice and then I can change it later, but I need to make a choice now. And it's just like she's like helped change my way of thinking. And like I would like come to her panicked. I'm like, I feel like I'm so behind. She's like, no, don't worry. And because she also like writes and like researches a lot, she's like in the same boat a lot of the times. So it's like helped me so much. And I feel like she's just so easy to talk to. Yeah. And because I've already known her, like it's been so nice.
That's such a beautiful relationship to craft.
I love that so much. I think that we hear that a lot on the show. We talk a lot about people who are like, oh my gosh, I couldn't have done this without the people that are supporting me. Yeah, so I'm glad that you have that relationship with someone who's like lifting you up in that way and giving you some of these opportunities. And I'm sure that she would say the same kinds of things about you.
Research definitely takes a village.
Yes, absolutely.
So we have one final question for you. There are many students who are and will be working on their Sparks applications, their honors college theses, and capstone projects. What advice do you have for students who are pursuing research but feel overwhelmed and confused by the process? And if you could go back in time and tell yourself something when you were starting out this journey, what would that be?
I think that as like the day that I walked into that museum like 2-3 years ago, I knew subconsciously that I wanted this to be my thesis. But I think that I was just so worried that it would be like so stereotypical that like the Polish girl does Polish art for her thesis. Like we've seen it before. But I think it's okay. Like if you feel that kind of like internal like longing for something, then just like go for it. Because I've spent so long like trying to think of like a question that would be like understood by people. Like I was like, maybe I should just focus on like Matisse or like Monet or like something simple or like go back to like ancient things. But that's not what I wanted. And even though this is like, ultimately, this is so much harder.
So you thought it was going to look like the easy way out, and you're like, no, I was just kidding.
I knew it wouldn't be the easy way out.
Right.
But I'm right that like, I'm so much more invested in it because it's like, I guess selfishly it pertains to me, but also like, it's still like, it is like my culture, my identity. So I'm going to be I'm so interested in like my own history and like local histories and like, all this stuff that I'm going to be more invested in. So I'm just going to, like, don't be scared that, like, something seems too on the nose.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's on your nose and it's in front of your eyeball, so look at it. And it's, like, yeah. And I think, like, just don't doubt yourself. And it's a fun process. Like, I think if I wasn't so excited to write my thesis, I, like, would probably be suffering right now. But I just, like, am really excited.
I think you shouldn't undermine what you're doing because you're doing a service of shedding light to this movement that honestly deserves more attention.
Oh, thanks.
Absolutely. It's something that obviously we've just learned so much about in this one interview. Like, I think that the way you're speaking about it again has so much soul. Like talking about how you feel so drawn to it, I think is something that's very valuable when it comes to research. We need more of that research that has a heart.
Right. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Joanna, for joining us today. We're so grateful for your time and for sharing your artistic journey with our listeners. And if our listeners have any questions about Joanna's project or would like to collaborate, you may contact her via email, which is included in our episode description.
And thank you to the Sparks Research Center for sponsoring this episode and continuing to support student innovation across campus. If you want to learn more about how to get involved with Sparks or apply for next summer's program, check out their page on the university website. We'll also link it in the episode description.
And that wraps up today's episode of The Summer I Found My Spark. Until next time, I'm Maci.
And I'm Errah. Stay tuned, stay curious, and keep reaching for your spark.